Thanks, Advait. Good morning. Nice. I know it's Saturday morning, so we're all a little asleep, but thank you guys for coming to this event and being a part of it. Thanks to the wonderful TEDx team for making this whole thing possible. It's actually kind of surprising because 10 years ago, nobody would have expected that I would later on give a speech in front of a crowd this size. I was a really quiet kid growing up. I didn't really talk much, and I like to think that it was because I didn't want to talk much, like I didn't feel the need to, because there were already more than enough opinions to go around already, and I didn't really see the necessity in complicating conversations by inserting my own opinion. That didn't mean I hated talking. In fact, I went to an international school, and because I was bilingual, I was nominated to be an MC, and I accepted. So basically, I would introduce the speeches and performances before they came up. So like, I was a big deal or whatever, right? You know, no big deal. I was a celebrity. I had paparazzi, a bodyguard, everything. It was great. Right? Yeah, trust me. But the event went well. Thanks for asking. Afterwards, I didn't really think much about it, but I overheard a couple people talking, and they were talking about me specifically. They were surprised that I had emceed at all and that I had done a decent job of it because it was well known that I was quiet at that school, so I already had this stereotype envisioned of me that I was your typical introvert and I didn't like to talk much. I didn't really know how I felt about that, right? I always thought of things like public speaking as skills that you could pick up, like a language, an instrument, a sport. I never thought of it as a trait that you'd be born with if you were an extrovert, and if you were an introvert, well, tough luck. So, curious about this, I went home and did some Google. What I wanted to know was to what extent people associate traits with personality typing, such as introversion and extroversion. And what I came up with was that introverts are more profound, more deep thinking, more artistic, more creative. This was the stereotype associated with introverts, and it comes partially from the definition of introversion, which means that you gain your energy from connecting with your internal world. That means you're at your best and you perform best and you're at your happiest when your creativity and your imagination is set free. And typically, introverts would find environments that allow their creativity and imagination to run free, so quiet environments are what suit them best. And because of that, they're seen as these traits. On the other hand, because they're more isolated from society in their quiet environments, they're also seen as more shy, withdrawn, socially awkward. And on the other side, we have the stereotypical extrovert. An extrovert, by definition, means that you gain your energy, you're invigorated when you're connecting with your external world. So extroverts typically try to find situations where building relationships and connecting with people is fun and easy. So this is all kind of semi-intuitive for stereotypes on introversion and extroversion. Extroverts are also seen as more loud, obnoxious, clingy, needy for attention because of the way that they need to gain their energy from interacting and talking with people. So after seeing this, I wanted to know if people took a step further from this like stereotypical introvert and extrovert spectrum, right? I wanted to see just how far people took it with this division between introversion and extroversion. I wanted to see if people actually made like dream occupations for introverts and extroverts. I wanted to see if you're an extrovert, you could find a list of jobs that suited you, and likewise, if you're an extrovert, you'd be able to find your dream occupations as well. So, here's what I found. On the introvert side, you can see a lot of occupations that don't need a lot of external interaction. You can see a lot of jobs that don't require a lot of communication with people. It's mostly about the introvert, his or her resources, his or her tools, his or her craft. The only times that they actually need to interact with people and communicate is basically after they're done with a project and they share their findings, and then after that, it's back to solitude, the workbench, the lab, etc. At the same time, if you look at the extroverted jobs, they're typically inherently extroverted because they allow communication between people every single day. It's an inherent part of their job, right? You can see teacher, human relations literally means relating with people, and public relations literally means relating with the public. When I was like 5 or 6, right, 10 years ago, I didn't really want to be any of these jobs. Even though I was an introvert, I wasn't that interested in science or art. I wasn't bad at it, but it wasn't a passion of mine. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a leader. And not like a politician type leader, like a director or a manager type role at like a mid-sized or large company, right? That's who I wanted to be. And the first thing I thought was, okay, well, it's probably an extroverted thing to be a leader, so I had this sinking feeling, but it wasn't listed in any of these, typical occupations. So I did have this glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, there would be a positive relationship between introversion and leadership. So I did some more Googling. Here's the concrete data that I found. There was a survey put out that said that 65% of senior corporate executives found introversion to be a liability rather than a benefit to leadership, whereas only 6% saw it as the other way around. So I saw this, and I was like, darn. Okay, well, I was a kid, I didn't use such strong language, right? But if I could have said darn, you bet I would have said it, because I was indignant, people. I was mad, right? Before, I didn't give introversion a second thought. I didn't think of it as something that would limit my future opportunities. But here it was, at odds with my dreams and my future aspirations. So I got mad, and I did the logical thing that mad people do. I kept Googling, right? And what I wanted to find was, introverts that were leaders and could change the world through their introverted leadership. I wanted to find concrete examples of phenomenal introverted leaders that have made their mark on history. Right? I wanted to defy this societal cultural bias and expectations that introverts are thinkers and extroverts are leaders. So there's this binary system that people think introverts always become thinkers and extroverts become leaders because of the inherent definitions of introvert and extrovert. If you're an extrovert and you love to think, then why not become a thinker? And if you're an extrovert and you love to deal with people, why not become a leader? But I wanted to see if there were any important crossovers that defied this type of stereotype or logic. And here's what I found. On the introvert spectrum, you can see a lot of familiar names. Maybe you've seen all of these names before, right? Some of them are pretty intuitive. You might have expected Mahatma Gandhi to be introverted. Likewise, you might have expected Nelson Mandela or even Martin Luther King Jr. But Grant and Robert E. Lee were the two biggest generals during the Civil War. Maybe you wouldn't have expected them to both be introverts. Likewise, George Washington is also a humongous general and also became the first president of the United States. Sometimes it's hard to imagine him as an introvert as well. And Mark Zuckerberg, like, are you kidding me? He's the founder of the social network. MySpace. Kidding. Facebook. But Mark Zuckerberg, if he is literally building his life around this social network, how could he possibly be an introvert, someone who's tired when networking and socializing with people? On the other side of the spectrum, you might have expected some of these extroverted names to be on here. Bill Nye, our favorite science guy, right? Extrovert. Maybe Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? He hosts talk shows and stuff. You might think of him as an extrovert as well. But you also have these great writers, right? Like Maya Angelou, Charles Dickens, Mark Twain. These people devote themselves to writing, and writing does not involve interacting with people a lot. So how does someone who finds his or her energy dealing with people and interacting with people and building connections, how does a person like that completely devote 100% of their life to this one craft that limits them significantly in interacting with people, that limits their enjoyment and limits their energy? How could these people do that? How could introverts lead legions and legions of people? How could introverts motivate countries and motivate generations? And at the same time, how can extroverts become extremely profound and independent thinkers? Well, it's something I like to call omniversion. And you may have heard of the roots before. Version comes from introversion, extroversion, ambiversion. It's about personality. I'll talk about ambiversion a little bit later to contrast it with omniversion and get you a better idea of what both mean. But omni, you may have heard it as a root in words like omnipotent, which means all-powerful, omniscient, which means all-seeing or all-knowing, and omnivore, which means all-eating. Omni means all or every. And in the case of omniversion, it means you have all the power to choose which traits you express. So if we look at the introvert-extrovert binary again, remember these stereotypical traits that were associated with introverts and extroverts. Well, a lot of people will say, look, ambiversion is the best personality type. Why? Because it mixes and mashes introverts and extroverts. So you have traits of both. But with ambiversion, it's not that you always get the best of both worlds, right? You get a mixture of the advantages and a mixture of the disadvantages, and you don't get to choose what you are. So you could be that perfect ambivert that's all of the good traits and all of the good traits of introverts and extroverts, but you could also be an ambivert if you were, shy, withdrawn, while also being obnoxious and rude and clingy, right? That's also a potential ambivert. But with omniverts, they basically have this personality buffet in front of them where they can pick and choose which traits they'd like to express, which positive attributes they'd like to maximize, which negative attributes they'd like to minimize and not let people see. And this has personally affected me too, right? Because 10 years ago, I was your stereotypical introvert, and nobody would have expected that I would later on become a TEDx speaker or a leader of any kind. But throughout years of hard work, I tried to put myself out there. I tried to socialize with people and connect with people. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a leader, so I put in the effort and invested into leadership. So now I've taken a lot of roles in the community as a leader, and also I'm here talking to you guys. That's how Omniversion has personally affected my life. So why am I telling you guys this, right? Why am I telling you guys that there's a superior personality type out there? Am I just insinuating that, there's this exclusive club of omniverts like George Washington and Mark Twain, and I just happen to be in that group? Right? Like, no big deal, right? No big deal. But no, the fact is, you guys are all a part of this exclusive omnivert club. Omniversion is just the ability to acquire traits. Think of it, the key of it is just trait acquisition. If you're an introvert, you want to become a good public speaker, you train, you speak in front of people, you put yourself out there, you try and connect with people, you eventually become a good public speaker. If you're an extrovert, you sit in your room, you think about yourself, you think about things, you think about deep philosophical things, you become a great thinker. It's all possible for you guys to acquire these traits. These traits are not independent and exclusive to the personality type binary system. We are all omniverts. So when you think about the Myers-Briggs type indicator, where you're given a personality type, don't think of it as something that limits you, that puts a brick wall between you and the other personality type so that you can only walk down one path and become one job later on in society, right? You're so much more than that. There are so many intangibles that no algorithm or computer could possibly categorize about you, because you are powerful because you are a human being, right? We are all omniverts. We're the best of both worlds. So when you hear phrases like, just be yourself, don't think of that as an excuse to embrace your flaws. You can't just sit down and cry and think, look, I was born with these disadvantages, so be it. Let's work to become the people that we aspire to be. Let's work to maximize our potential. That's the key of Omniversion, the fact that all of you guys have infinite potential. You are not some manufactured product being ushered down an assembly line to be given a label later on so that you can only serve a single purpose, a limited purpose in society. We are all masterpieces, so let's blaze our own trail. Omniversion is your augmented personality type, so let's blaze our own trail, and while we're at it, let's change the world. Thank you.